Bill number 1, 2014. And this is the continuation of the Coalition Government's commitment to the Australian people to restore integrity to Australia's migration system and to ensure the security of Australian borders. Now, as the member for Kingsford Smith said, it's quite a technical bill and it goes to a whole lot of detail, and whether I regurgitate it all or not is whether it gets in Hansard, it's been done, but there is a number of elements that need to be mentioned because it does amend Acts, so sections 48, 48A, 51, 501E of the Act can be correctly applied according to the policy's intention. Now, it ensures that a pending bridging visas application cannot be used to prevent removal, thus limiting the ability of some detainees to frustrate the removal process. It does go to apply the debt liability provisions of all the Act to all convicted people smugglers and illegal foreign fishers, as the member previously said. It does clarify the process and requirements relating to the receipt of documents by an authorised recipient from the Migration Review Tribunal or Refugee Review Tribunal. It does clarify the role of the authorised recipient and the requirement to notify them of any direct communication that the Department may have had with the person who appointed them, and it does allow for the access and the use of material and information obtained under search warrants issued under the Crimes Act 1914 by the Department for duties under this and other acts. It does see that the procedural fairness requirements prescribed in this Act apply universally to all applications. And finally, it does repeal any reference to Section 14 of the Electronic Transitions Act 1999. But before I continue on this debate, Deputy Speaker, I would like to talk about the success and the reason why we're here today in this particular context, fixing up Labor's mess on migration. Let's understand that when John Howard left office in 2010, there were 4 people in detention as a result of having come by boats. When he handed over, that was the situation. When the Labor Party handed over, because the people booted them out essentially, because this is one of the reasons, they couldn't control our borders, we had something like 30,000 people displaced in the Australian community without their visa status assessed. We had something like 15,000 people in detention, either in detention on places like Christmas Island, Shergar, Curtin, or they had been released into the community because they were deemed not to be of any conflict if they had been released. Now, I have to congratulate the now Minister for Immigration, Scott Morrison, for what he has done in this area. He had one of the biggest challenges because everyone knew that John Howard stopped the boats and stopped the illegal trade of migration. But after 6 years, and the media were very responsible for this, saying, well, it's different now, it's gone too far, you can't stop it. It's entrenched. The people smugglers have got the upper hand. And so Kevin Rudd, when he became Prime Minister, found a solution to destroy a successful outcome in terms of protecting our borders. Now, I'm particularly appalled, Deputy Speaker, I'm particularly appalled that the first Immigration Minister or Minister for Migration under the Labor Party was a Western Australian, and his name was Senator Chris Evans. And Senator Chris Evans was the one who turned the green light on. And the green light essentially said, if you can get to Australia, you'll get a visa. If you get to Australia, not only will you get a visa, but you get somewhere to live and you'll essentially get paid and your kids will go to school, and if you stay long enough, we'll get you a visa. Now, what sort of green light is that? The rest of the world, have a look at Lampedusa in Italy. Dare I talk about Italian connections? Their boats are sinking off Lampedusa because the Africans now have realised that there is a porous border solution going through Italy. And before you say, how would you know, I went to Italy, I went to Sicily, and I went to Caltagirone, where there is a detention centre. I'm not sure, Caltagirone or Caltanissetta, the right one. One's a pottery place and one's a detention centre. Now, at the end of the day, I went there and talked to the Africans that were in detention there. And they basically said, well, same story. All we have to do is get on a boat and then Italy will take us. And when I went to another detention centre in Rome, I said to the policeman that was showing me around the detention centre, why don't you try and stop these people and send them back like we do? This is during the John Howard era. He said, well, I'm sorry, Senor, we are the land of the Pope. We don't do that. In other words, you know, we've got a soft and open heart. But what the Italians didn't do, Deputy Speaker, was they sent them north. They took them into their detention centres, gave them money to go to Germany and Denmark and all these northern European countries that decided that they should open their borders as well. And you can see what's happening in France as a result. So, thanks very much, Senator Chris Evans, for what you did. Then he was followed by, let's get the order right, the member for Gorton, then the member for McMahon, and finally the member for Watson, who all presided over the disgraceful situation which allowed people to come to Australia unbridled. And as I said, they're now sitting in the Australian community. Remember when Kevin Rudd said, we're going to put a moratorium on Afghans and we're not going to process them. And as a result, they stayed in. I wouldn't talk too much if I was you. Listen, if anybody knows about Sri Lanka, I know about Sri Lanka. I'm the chair of the Sri Lankan Friendship Group, and I can tell you, the member for Moreton, I know more about this situation than you'll ever write a dirty book about. So at the end of the day, can I tell you, the member, what you don't understand is what you did on your side when you were in government to the border protection of this country. You are a disgrace. And you should open your mouth. Aren't you the one who said you were going to resign from Parliament if Kevin Rudd ever came back again? Why didn't you have the guts to resign? You didn't have the guts, did you? You didn't have the guts to resign.
Order. I'll call the Shadow Minister.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Can I ask the member to address his remarks through the chair? Thank you.
I think I'll just say that the member for Canning has the call, and the member for Canning will address all his remarks through me.
Need to be responded to, Deputy Speaker. And if the drivel keeps going, I'll keep responding to it. So, you know, if he wants to keep quiet, we'll continue with the bill.
The member
but
for
if
Moreton
he wants me to point out his history and his party's history on this issue, I'm happy to do that. I'm happy to do that. So at the end of the day, this is the party that opened the gate. But not only that, this is what the now Minister Scott Morrison is doing. These technical amendments stop the ability of people, smugglers, to get away with it, essentially. It stops them from appealing through every court level in Australia. It stops them from using our judicial system and taxpayers' money to stay here. And so all these amendments that we're going through are necessary because they found legal circumventions to the laws that the Labor Party had put in, with the help of the Greens, I will add. The Greens were in bed with them. They formed a coalition with them.
The member for Moreton will let the member for Canning speak in silence.
If you've got something decent to contribute, wait your turn. But otherwise, show some manners. Now, dare I say, Deputy Speaker, at the end of the day, our ability to fix this and turn back the boats, which people said could never happen, has been done. Almost 6 months, there hasn't been a boat. And there's been no help from the media. All the Canberra Press Gallery and the left-wing version of the Canberra Press Gallery, and dare I say one of the biggest culprits, the ABC, has been part of this process of undermining us fixing it. I understand Laura Tingle in the weekend's media, it was reported as having said the coalition would have to backtrack on our hard migration changes because it would never work. Well, we didn't backtrack. We actually put them in place, and as a result, we've stopped the boats. Almost 6 months since there has been an illegal arrival by boat. But there we had George Roberts from the ABC. Now, George Roberts is up in Indonesia and he's trying to make himself a name as a junior ABC journalist. He was the one, Deputy Speaker, who went out there and vilified our service personnel, our naval personnel, saying that we forced them to put their hands on the hot exhausts of the boats and burnt their hands. And not only did he not backtrack, he continued to repeat it. Not only did he continue to repeat it, but he was backed up by the ABC executives at the most senior editorial level. So, against all the lack of assistance from the press gallery here in Canberra, we've stopped the boats. So, Deputy Speaker, the whole issue is these amendments are going to do something about making sure that the department has the ability, through both the department itself and the Migration Review Tribunal, to stop people using the system to stay here. Now, it's going to be a common sense approach to processing of visas for the people who are clogging the system. And the continual nuisance applications designed to facilitate their further stay in Australia is just going to be dealt with through these amendments. Now, as the previous member for Kingsford Smith, and I don't know him well, but he seemed to be quite genuine in what he was saying. He was in the Senate, by the way, when these laws were passed. But at the end of the day, he seems interested in trying to make sure now that, and I understand the Labor Party are not opposing these amendments, so it'll be interesting to see the member for Moreton come and criticise them, even though they're not going to vote against them. But they will, at the end of the day, work on making sure that we can finally stop the rorts that have been happening through this change of system. Now, you just go and write another dirty book and see how you go.
Order.
All right.
Order. The member for Moreton, when he speaks, will be
That's
heard in
right.
silence.
You'll have the
so I
opportunity
expect him
shortly.
to
You know, Kevin
be
Rudd's
very
mate.
respectful for the member for
Now,
Canning.
one of the things that these changes and these amendments will do will be to enshrine the character test into legislation. Now, the Labor Party talked about character tests under their new regime. I think they even talked about new paradigms and things like these sort of things, but none of them worked. But if you recall on boats that arrived off Darwin, for example, the one that they set fire themselves, and the court even found that 5 people were guilty of having started the fire. Deputy Speaker, can you believe those people got visas under the previous government? They were given visas to stay in Australia, even though they killed some of the people on their own boats. This is what this legislation is going to do to fix up those terrible rorts and those terrible lack of accountability that happened under the previous government here. So, you know, we're the ones who are going to bring integrity back to the system of migration in this country. I know those on the other side are uncomfortable about this. Now, the member for Fremantle is somebody I know well, being a Western Australian. I know that she wanted to move in her party room, that they move away from detention. Remember, it was Jerry Hand all those years ago that was the one who confirmed that they would have mandatory detention in this country. Those on the other side are still uncomfortable, particularly the left of the Labor Party, that they got mandatory detention. But it's a bipartisan policy. But they still want to move in their own caucus meetings that they walk away from these things. That's the real issue here, Deputy Speaker. If they had the opportunity again to be on the Treasury benches or on this side of the House, they would water down the arrangements, the legislation, so we could turn a green light on again. As I said, we want to bring fairness back into the system. There's a whole lot of people that are overseas. I have constituents who have family overseas that are trying to bring their children as a result. He talked about domestic violence. A particular lady that I know in Malaysia that's subject to domestic violence, and she's been ostracised by her ex-husband in Malaysia, who's returned to the Middle East. She can't get a visa. She's stranded in Malaysia. They're the sort of people that we want to bring to Australia, rather than the ones that pay our people smuggler $10,000, then use our court system to park themselves in Australia on the charitable organisations of Australia, like the Salvation Army and other charitable people. This is decent legislation designed to tidy up the mess that the Labor Party brought into this place, brought to this country, and as a result denigrated our reputation as a migration without any discrimination. And I would support the bill, obviously.